This is the Team Objection Podcast for September 13th, 2022, episode 544. And sometimes everything just falls into place. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and a cavalcade of news hits over the course of the day and it plans the show for you. You don't have to do anything. You just sit there and exist and everything comes together nicely. It works out nicely, right? But then sometimes you're unexpected. So we had things that we knew were coming today, like the Nintendo Direct. We knew that was going to happen. Didn't know what was going to be in it, but there was a strong suspicion you were going to see some Zelda or Metroid or both. So that happened, and then there was a state of play today from PlayStation. So we had that with the Sony stuff. And there was some unexpected news, like the owner of our team being a horrible racist. I guess it wasn't really unexpected, but we didn't know it was going to happen today. So, lots to go over, primarily the Nintendo Direct, and we're going to start with that because I'm wearing bright red and they all have Nintendo shirts on.
Yeah, that's where I want to spend most of our time is the Nintendo Direct, although it was not even the best development of the day, I would say. Well, that gets hard. I'll explain more as we get there, but yes, Nintendo Direct. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
What do we want to start with?
I mean,
probably the biggest thing, right?
The biggest one. Yeah, you gotta start with Tears of the Kingdom for sure.
Yeah, so is it Tears or Tears? That was one question that I had.
Great question.
It is Tears. Someone on our writing stuff actually looked it up, like the Japanese alphabet, and it is the word for tears.
Interesting.
Not tears.
Do you think the intention was to have like a double meaning? Like, are you going to be closing tears across the kingdom?
Well,
probably not.
Here's what I saw that was interesting. I mean, this lends credence to the idea of tears. Is you're jumping off a platform that seems to be in the sky, a lot like Skyward Sword in that instance. So it gave me that feeling of Skyward Sword. So is there some sort of time travel element back in this? Are you going back to the 10,000 years before of Skyward Sword? Or are you jumping? My thought was, okay, is this Tears of the Kingdom? Is this going to be showing us how Calamity Ganon took over over the Guardians and took over that part of Hyrule in that 100 years before Breath of the Wild? I'm excited to see.
Probably not. Although I like where your head's at. So for once, I'm not just insulting you for fun. I'm not insulting you at all. Hopefully, I think so. As you know, because we followed this was Breath of the Wild 2 until today. So I think it's still going to be, same link. It's after the first Breath of the Wild. It's still going to be like. I mean, it could be time travel to another realm, but I don't think it's going to be like a wildly different time period that it's taking place in, or like a prequel of like this is Ganon how he came to power. I think it's going to be a follow up story, but I love that it's its own game. I don't know why it means a lot to me that it's like its own title and not just like Breath of the Wild 2. Just like it wasn't Ocarina of Time 2, it was Majora's Mask. So, really exciting. I like the idea of the gameplay, the verticality, more time spent in this world. And I mean, they're obviously giving it like the full Nintendo attention. It's not just like a cash in, which I don't know if anybody thought it was, but really excited. And next year.
I am not
so excited.
6 years. 6 years since Breath of the Wild came out. I hope not.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Right. And I it's reassuring to see because it has been a number of years since we got Breath of the Wild that they really are taking advantage of the engine. It's not just, a lazy sequel. They're putting a lot of time and effort into the story and the world. Like, it's going to be even bigger than it was in last game, which was already huge. So I'm excited.
That's how they should be approaching these. This is what we talked about is like, don't do one Zelda game. Then the next one, it's a whole new engine on a whole new system. Like, leverage your assets and then innovate from there. And that's exactly what they did. They listened to the show. Clearly, they're big fans of Nintendo of America. And, I, for one, am glad.
Man, I want them to do a prequel. I know it's not going to be, but man, like, I know we had done, like, Hyrule Warriors. That was kind of that prequel-ish thing. The ish, exactly. But man, that gives me Red Dead Redemption 2 vibes where it's like, hey, here's the story. Now, how did we get here? And that is such a cool experience.
Yeah.
And you can argue the whole timeline sort of serves in that function in a way. So it's kind of weird no matter where they place the game at this point. I don't know. I like the idea that this could have some kind of like time travel in it, but I'd almost rather it doesn't and just stick to this world and the fallout of what happened in the first game, and then maybe actually make a compelling villain instead of a waste of time.
You mean a cloud of pink a purple gas.
Yeah, because like the idea of Calamity Ganon is solid, and I like the looming threat of him, but I just didn't think the end of the game delivered whatsoever. So I'm hoping that we have a final encounter worth its time this time. That's all.
I just think, to me, this maybe is a hot take, and you have to be careful anytime you criticize this game in particular. The benefit of being able to have a structure where you can go straight to the boss, while really neat to say, I don't think I think there's too many other things you have to compromise on to make that worth it. I would have rather had a more fully developed Ganon like the one we got in Wind Waker than the one we got in this one, even though it's cool to be able to say, like, yeah, you speedrun it. If you want to go fight him in your first 15 minutes or whatever, go for it. That's cool. I would have rather had a good story and a well-developed villain.
I'm hoping we do lean towards that this time. I love the open world exploration, but I do think the story does suffer a little bit in Breath of the Wild because, like you guys said, if you don't, like, you have to pursue it if you want it. It's not very linear in that sense. So I'm kind of hoping we get a more classic story, but then you sprinkle in some of that open world in there, and get a really. I hope we get a compelling villain with a zombie Ganon or whatever.
Zombie Ganon. He's back.
That's all we have.
He's back. Actually,
Mummy Ganondorf. I'm hoping he's
Triforce of Power.
Dave, I am with you though. At some point, getting a game that does take place in the past, I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, I would be a fan of that.
That'd
Full
be
like
so cool.
Zelda traditional experience, but where you know the ending's going to be bad, but it's still interesting. And I mean, it's like Star Wars. Like, you know, those first 3 episodes, it's going to end poorly.
Yeah.
But some of those movies are really compelling.
Yeah, or Rogue One, which some of it is really good. I mean, you know what's going to happen to those characters, so it can be done really well. And I think, to your point, we kind of gave a full review to this game, and obviously I was probably the harshest of the 3 of us. And it's still a game that I enjoyed quite a bit. I want to see the world continue to be this open, explorable area. So I'm not trying to make major changes, but it's like, at the end of the day, the end of the game needs to have some structure to it. And I don't think that should be something you can speedrun to. If you want to tackle anything in the world in any order, and if you have the skills and the mindset to do it, then great. But there should be some gate there. You know, maybe it's like they hit the 4 divine beasts you had to beat or whatever, right? Those should have to be like, those can be any order. But after that, there should be like, okay, when the player gets here, they're going to at least have X. And we can give them a challenge appropriate to that, and not just like, well, whatever, they might be there in 2 hours or 30. You don't know.
Yeah.
And like I always hated the idea too in Breath of the Wild that you got to the Hyrule Castle, and if you had the Zora armor, you could literally just swim up the waterfalls and boop, there you are. You just skipped everything in Hyrule Castle. And I know the idea was you can take it at your own pace, you can do what you want. But now for me, going through Hyrule Castle is almost boring, because it's like, okay, there's a shit ton of guardians that once you learn how to do the parry with the shield, they're kind of easy, and there's a big Lionel. Cool, like, it's not that hard anymore. The hard part is exploring and finding everything.
That's why I played the game and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, that core experience I'm still really excited for coming off this trailer. But now I'm thinking to myself, okay, how can it be better than the first iteration? Because for a lot of people, that's like the best game ever made. I think that's absolute horseshit. But if we can build on that, then all of us are going to be happy, because either the best game that was ever made is better, or it's going to fix some of the problems that some of us had with it, and then just become a really good experience.
Yep. Agreed. Get some of the like dungeon building of like Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time mixed with the open world of Breath of the Wild. Sounds great to me.
I mean, I'm excited for the fact of I actually bought the DLC for Breath of the Wild and have played through a lot of it already, and played through things that are designed to be challenges, which I very rarely do in games. And it's still fun for me because the fighting system is fun, the weapon system is fun. I mean, it's an enjoyable game still to this day for me.
Jack Rock says, living up to the hype is not going to be easy for this game after waiting this long. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. I mean, Nintendo's pedigree on its major its major AAA titles is pretty unparalleled. The number of misses in Nintendo's catalog on Mario and Zelda in particular are real low, a real small number. So you have to imagine this is going to deliver to some extent. Will it be better than the first? Will it be in that pantheon of like the best of all time? I mean, who knows? But at the very least, it's exciting that we have a date, and we also know, like, hey, this is going to deliver to some extent. Like, none of us are going to pick this up and be disappointed in it, like, vastly. Maybe it won't deliver everything we want, but it's going to be a great game. It's just a question of how great can it be.
Can we talk about the second most exciting thing?
Fire Emblem?
From Nintendo Direct? Yes.
I figured you would like that trailer.
Yeah, so Dave, you never played. What have you played in Fire Emblem? None of it?
Super Smash Brothers, where I sometimes get randomly selected on Marth.
I'm so disappointed.
He knows
anyways,
Marth's name, though. That is something.
So
Speaking of Marth,
it is not exactly what I was hoping for, but I think I don't know, depending on what Reddit board or a discussion board you're on, people either really, really loved or really were ready to move away from the teaching model of the previous one. I loved it. Even on our panel, Chris didn't really care for it all that much. I loved it. Michaela,
I also loved it.
You loved it?
I'm
Well,
pretty
there
sure
you go.
I did anyway.
We're moving away from that. It seems like it's a lot more. From what I got, it's going to be more like Awakening, where you're still going to get an element of the conversations and the story and almost like visual novel-esque nature of between fights, but much less emphasis on like a hub world and non-combat stuff. Is that what you both saw from that too?
Well, initially, when I first watched the trailer,
Yeah, tell that story, actually.
I was strongly reminded of the mobile game Fire Emblem Heroes, where you summon various heroes from across all the Fire Emblem titles onto your team, and that's what it reminded me of from the outset. It was just Fire Emblem Heroes on the Switch.
And I was giving you shit when I read new Fire Emblem game, you can summon Marth.
and the two characters on the center of the art are
Yes.
kind of like red and blue haired versions of the ones from Heroes too. So I see the parallels.
I was like, oh no, I don't want this.
No.
Now,
Right.
it turns out it's more, Michaela, we talked and you had the great analogy of like, it's almost like Persona-esque where you can summon old characters like their spirits sort of for attacks and abilities,
Yes.
but you're going to have your own cast, they're going to have their own story, and it's going to be very much a mainline traditional Fire Emblem game, but just with some acknowledging and bringing in of the past, which I guess is cool.
And to a certain
Yeah.
extent, I almost think it's better because it looks like they're going to actually involve them in the story. Like there were different cutscenes in that trailer with Marth actually like, you know, pushing open a door and like being involved.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it ends up being kind of like Tokyo Mirage sessions where it's like, it's a Fire Emblem character that's a persona. And you're like, cool, I summon him in battle. And then he goes away and it has no impact. So
At
it's like,
all.
it's a neat cameo.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
disparaging that game. I like that game, but it didn't have any like meaning. And this looks like there could be some significance to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm much more excited now knowing that it's going to be more like a mainline. Because that was my initial worry. It was like, oh no, we're getting away from like a mainline title like Three Houses, which with a really deep political intrigue story. And we're moving into like summoning. And I was like, what is this going to mean? But I feel a lot better about it now, knowing that it is going to be more like that typical experience. But you can summon characters from other games. I saw Celica in the trailer and Sigurd. So if they pull a bunch of characters from other games and give them recognition, and then justify remaking those games someday, that'd be
Yeah.
really cool.
And there were several others in the stained glass logo at the start before they really introduced the trailer, like Lynn's in there. There's a few others kind of scattered about there.
Mikaya's in there.
Yeah,
saw
so I
her
mean,
too.
I'm surprisingly optimistic. I'm not going to say I fell off after Three Houses, but I certainly enjoyed the least of the three of us. And this one at least has kind of rekindled, like, okay, you know what else helped with that? And this is something that even Dave can speak to now. It's coming out in 4 months. This
Yep.
is the first leak. So to the original point, and like Chakrok mentioned, like the wait for Breath of the Wild 2. Look, we know Zelda games take time, so I'm not knocking Zelda for this, but at the same time, it was kind of refreshing to have a big time title announced with a 4-month window into a direct release date. That look, it could still miss, but let's be honest, it's probably going to hit. I love that. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I have less time to game now. But I'm not like on pins and needles needing to know a year and a half in advance what games are coming out.
Yeah.
And of course, the counterexample of this is Metroid Prime 4, which was not in this direct,
Yeah.
which was announced more than 5 years ago now and is a fucking train wreck. So props to
Yeah.
Fire Emblem for that because it's like, hey, January 20th, that's going to be here before I know it. Like I got a busy rest of the year and the holidays, and then before I know it, it's going to be coming out. Cool.
I'm so happy as someone who spent, I want to say, approaching 200 hours on Three Houses. This is great for play, and it's the perfect game because after you go through it the first time, if you're replaying it again, it's like enough attention to keep you engaged, but like you can still like kind of do other stuff and watch TV or whatever. I love that. Also, I have to report back to you really quick, Dave. I want you to hold your. I want your question, but I just have to tell you. There was some kind of glitch in the time reporting of Rogue Legacy 2. 20 hours is what I spent, not 120 hours or 112, what I told you last week that I spent on the game. How Do I not know personally the difference between 20 and 100 and something? That's a fair concern.
Yeah,
you
COVID,
got me.
COVID fog.
You have COVID brain, yeah.
But it was 20 hours, which I think 20 hours in 2 weeks, a lot more respectable than 112. Anyways, I just wanted to get back to you on that
I
one.
remember doing the math on that. I was like, you know,
Yeah, it was bad.
If you sleep a minimum of 6 hours per day, that subtracts this much, and then
And it was funny because as you were telling me, I was like, it didn't feel like I did that. Like I played a lot, but that's bad. That's like, just like I have no awareness of time. Anyways, you had a question though.
yeah, it's really esoteric to me, narcissistic to me. So January 20th is the date. That's 5 days after my birthday. So if you want to get that for me for my birthday, then maybe I'll play it.
Do you actually want that for your birthday? Don't fuck around.
I mean, I'm just saying.
If you're teasing, you better tell me now.
When's the last time you got me a birthday present? So therefore,
never. So this would be the first one, but I don't want to waste my money if you're not actually going to play it.
I think we should wait till after release. I like the spirit of the idea, and I think Fire Emblem is a series that Dave could like.
Probably.
But we need to know more about this game before I'm like, let's have Dave jump in on that one, because to me, if anything, it would be Awakening first.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know anymore. Maybe. We'll see.
You could just give me Awakening, and I'd be like, this is the new game. Oh, that's
Dave's
crazy.
a father, so there are aspects of that game that I'm not going to spoil that he would like quite a bit, I think. In addition to the fact that tactical and turn-based are really not that far apart, so that's going to strike a chord with him as well.
Yeah,
maybe. Did you marry Courtney just to breed good children?
I mean, it was.
Did you choose Courtney because of the skills you would pass down specifically?
I mean, there's some good qualities.
Well, I didn't mean for you to bash Courtney. I was trying to make an analogy.
Oh no, there's no bashing. Game. I respect her wholly and her abilities.
So we'll see what the reviews are. Totally. Like I mean, even me is like, I'm so excited. If the game comes out and they're like, it's a huge miss for whatever reason, not polished. Even I'm going to be like, well, then I'm not going to waste my time.
It's Fates 2. I'm going to be like, well,
totally. Yeah.
Then count me out.
No. Yeah. I think I'm going to wait just a little bit before I pre-order it. Well, now that we talked, that definitely helped. Because before I was like, and then we discussed it and was like, oh, okay. I probably will at some point.
What is Fates 2?
No, well, Fates.
Fates. Okay.
Right. So then if this was Fates like 2.0.
I see.
Not actually a direct
Thank
sequel,
you.
but
I was really conservative. Again, the COVID fog. I'm like, wait. And I liked Fates okay, but definitely easily the worst since Awakening.
Yeah, I mean,
it's funny how much I
hate
soured
it,
on that game. I used to I really liked it when it first came out. Then over time, I just very quickly was like, nope, it is actually the worst.
I liked it okay, and then I really didn't like it, and then where I eventually left it was like, not bad, actually, like pretty good.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that probably is.
I soured on it so quick at the time, but it wasn't like it was terrible. I didn't hate my time with it, but compared to the other games,
the problem is it's so close to Awakening, but worse in almost every way.
Yeah,
so
that's a tough standard.
True.
Yeah,
it's
I just
funny
want them
how
to remake
a big series does that. You have a big series that you're like, yeah, it's okay, comparatively to the rest of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, like Oracle of Ages and Seasons are that for me in the Zelda series, where there are some people that really love those, but for the most part, it seems to be kind of forgotten. And it's like, they're not bad games. There's just like 12 better in the series, so that's tough for them.
I loved them at the time, and now I'm like, I don't think I ever need to play them again.
Yeah.
Actually, I did a few years ago. They're so much harder than I remembered. Also,
yes,
maybe I was better as a kid, but I was like going through and I was like, I'm getting my ass kicked.
That was me playing A Link to the Past. From like, thank God I have save states and rewinding on the Switch because I don't want to go through this again.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
So among the other Nintendo Direct news, nothing major per se, unless you're a Pikmin fan.
Pikmin
which
4,
I don't think any of us are.
I didn't even
never played it.
I love Pikmin 1.
Okay.
Then they got rid of the probably mechanic that made me love it in the first place, which is the time limit.
Yep.
I don't. Maybe 2 had a time limit. I'm pretty sure 3 does not, and I'm sure 4 will not either because that's too hardcore. Without the time limit, it just is sort of like a casual game that I don't care about.
The time limit was what makes that first game. I mean, I was a kid when I attempted to play it, and the whole time limit thing was very stressful. A lot like Majora's Mask. So if I were to play it now as an adult, if I can get through Majora's Mask now, I can probably get through Pikmin.
Because it's about optimizing. You gotta optimize every movement, and now you don't need to. So it's like, why do I care?
Yeah, it's interesting to me that it's getting a 4th game because I'm sure the series does well, but I would not think it did so well that that we're 4 games in now. It's just kind of funny how clearly my perception is wrong, and that's okay. But
But hey, good for them. If they're fans of the series, like I don't really care about that series, but I was kind of happy to see the announcement. I'm like, that's gonna be cool for people who like that.
Do you think Nintendo has had conversations of Metroid 4 is a disaster? We were having to restart development. Meanwhile, Metroid Dread was like gangbusters. Do we just go in that direction? Do you think it's at least been talked about?
Well, I'm sure it was. The problem I have with it is they restarted development 3 years ago. So,
Yeah.
like, at this point, why don't we have any more news again? Like, when they restarted, people were noticeably miffed, and probably rightfully so, because, again, they teased it in 2017, and it was like, oh, cool, it's coming. And then a year and a half later, they started over. But that was the start of 2019. It's 2022. And, yes, the pandemic was in there. There's really no excuse for the lack of news on this. So I'm sure those were conversations that happened, and maybe they should go with more 2D games in the future, given how well Dread did. But at the very least, tell us that 4 is not happening. You can't just be silent. And
I don't really get why. So, like, they've done, it's going to be more of the Metroid Prime series. They've actually gone back and put, like, first-person, more modern controls in those games. So they've shown they can do it. And then, look, maybe Metroid Prime 4 will come out and it'll blow my socks off with how innovative it is. But I don't get what's happening.
I'm confused and I'm frustrated as a Metroid fan.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, well, Metroid fans are eating well because they got the Metroid 2 remake and then Dread in like the span of less than 2 years. It's like, yeah, but before that,
Yeah.
and since then, and I know it's not been that long since Dread, but still, it's like I think we're on a good trajectory again for Metroid, but we're not the heights we were at in the 2000s. So let's wait a little bit.
And wasn't Dread rumored itself for like 10 years
Oh yeah,
or more?
a large amount of time before it was kind of dropped into direct around this time last year. And then again, that was a release date that I think was 2-3 months after the announcement, which was awesome.
So that sentiment is weird to me of like, oh, those lucky Metroid fans, like, yeah, we got a game after a decade.
Yeah.
We're
Lucky
so
us.
lucky.
And there's other franchises like Mega Man, or like they're like, well, hey, a game in a decade that's better than what we get, and that's like, okay, but maybe we could all strive to be better and not just like milling about on the floor to see who's the lowest.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can be Persona and Zelda fans and get a game every 6 years.
Yeah.
But at least when you do, it's like guaranteed to work, unlike Metroid, where it was like they wait other mission or other M, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and then it dies for a decade.
Yeah.
I am fine waiting a long time if it means a great game. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Miyamoto quote's been done to death by now, but it still rings true. Jaguar brings up a point that I saw in a couple other social media posts and on Reddit as well about farming sim fans are still partying. Yeah, there were a lot of JRPGs and or farming sims in today's Direct, which is awesome if you're a fan of those genres. Michaela.
Yeah, I guess I am.
this is why you're here.
This is why I'm here. I don't know if I'm gonna play any of them. I didn't.
Okay,
I
get out.
couldn't get into
Get
Rune I couldn't get into Rune Factory 5. That was like the most recent one. Could not get into it at all. I don't know if I'm just like out of the headspace.
Cut away from Michaela.
To be fair,
She ruined the segue.
you were not the only person who was struggling with that game, though.
Were you struggling as well?
Not me personally, but I know for people that really loved 4, there was a lot of disappointment with 5.
Yeah, I loved 4, and then playing 5, I'm like, this is not working the way 4 did.
But we had Atelier Rise of 3, which is surprising a little bit because 2 just came out a few months ago. There was that Fae Farm game that had up to 4-player co-op. So that might be niche enough to get me to give it some interest. There's a Harvest Moon remake. So, like, there's a lot of stuff there. Harvestella's kind of interesting to me. That's coming out in 2 months. That's a Square Enix one. There's a lot of Square Enix in the presentation today as well.
I want to shout out, just because we're talking about JRPGs, the Xenoblade, the first wave of DLC comes out in October.
Robot Girl.
Yeah.
Robot, new character, which probably means that's a new actually class that unlocks for the rest of your people if they keep doing that structure.
I hope so.
New costumes. So I'm like, cool. It
excited.
might make me like pause the game a little bit, wait for the DLC to come out, give everybody new costumes, get the new character, and then finish it. So
that's true. Yeah, I probably won't. I mean, we'll see how I'm doing. I'm only on chapter 5, and I've been playing it for, when did it come out? Couple months. So I'm moving very slowly. So, but I am excited. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is great. Everyone should go check it out.
Yeah.
The little surprise for me was Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, which had the 2 DS/3DS games. We'll probably have a nice home on the Switch. Has almost 400 songs in it, so I might give it a look. It also apparently now has multiplayer, both co-op and competitive.
Dave, here's a question for you. Good morning. I have a question that's relevant to you.
I can wake up now.
Actually, now I just saw a new thing and I forgot my question for you.
Cool.
You might care about this though. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I'll see. I have the past couple Kirby games have come out. I've like Dream. God, what was the name? Most recent one that I'm blanking on the name of it.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land?
Yes, that one. Yes. So watched my kids played it. I helped them a little bit. I didn't care to play it at all. It was it was too easy.
Yeah.
It was good for them. You know, it was great
This
for them.
isn't going to be like that, but
It's a remake of a Wii game, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a good one at that. And it
Yeah.
actually has kind of fixed one of the smallest but still kind of primary issues we had with it when we played it, which was
Mhm.
that everybody kind of just wanted to be Kirby. It's fine to be Meta Knight, and I guess King Dedede and Waddle Dee are fine. But now you can be 4 Kirbys if you want. You can have different copy powers. So
Yeah.
that'll probably help, especially because also Kirby has like the big sword power up and stuff. So it always felt like if you were one of the secondary players, you didn't have as much to do. Looks like they addressed that, so it's going to be in a fun new shiny package,
Yeah.
drop in, drop out co-op, probably fun with your kids. So I think that one's going to be worth a look for you.
and I remember my question. The PSP remake of the Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. Any interest at all as a 7 fan?
I mean, 7 fan is tedious at best. It's okay. But that's a Crisis Core is about Zack, correct?
Yeah, it's a prequel.
Yeah,
For
I
the
never
most
played
part.
it. Never played it. I mean, maybe I could be interested. It's kind of hard sometimes to go back to old games when you've been separated from it. Like I kind of realized that trying to play the original Final Fantasy VII on my Switch, it's just kind of like,
Yep.
oh man, this is a slog in some ways.
That's why you got to
comparatively.
turn on the cheats for that one.
Yeah,
just all
exactly.
the cheats, just blow through it. You've beaten it before, you don't need to struggle. And that was kind of my question to you though. Was like I'm strongly guessing one of the reasons you did not check it out originally is because of you were limited by the platform. You didn't own a PSP, I don't think.
Correct.
So now that it's more accessible, you're like, oh, I might check it out now. You're like, they both sell. It's a remaster. There's only probably going to be so much that they're going to touch the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm excited because I've always liked Zack, and I also had a similar problem. Like I didn't bother with the PSP version because I didn't have one for a long time, and now I've been playing the 7 remake, and we're getting the Rebirth next year at some point.
yeah,
So now it's like this is a perfect opportunity to dive into the remaster with Zack. So I'm excited.
I'm a little concerned. What are you going to say, Dave?
Well, just before we transition to PlayStation, because it feels like we're going that way.
No, we're not yet. This is still a Switch thing.
Oh well, yeah. You mentioned Final Fantasy VII coming out next year.
That's a Switch thing. Oh, okay. Michaela,
Well,
I
see.
did the
I
thing.
see.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
continue.
derailed us, but it's
Continue.
okay.
There's just I don't know if any of you have played Switch Sports. Wii Sports is such a big deal when it came out. I have Switch Sports. I think it's a lot of fun. They announced the golf aspect, the game of that is coming out in the holidays. I'm actually really looking forward to that. My kids are looking forward to that too because it is a very fun one to play together. So it was kind of weird how they released a game. They're like, "Hey guys, more stuff is coming later. Don't worry."
Well, that is sort of Nintendo's model nowadays, for better or worse, with any of its sports titles, because in the Direct, we also saw a free Strikers update, free the Switch Sports one, a Mario Kart update. Of course, they're going through all the course packs. So, for better or worse, in the case of Mario Kart, I don't blame them because they're putting out a ton of new courses for that. But some people don't necessarily love the fact that both golf and tennis, and also, I suppose, Strikers, kind of released without a complete slate of content.
Yeah.
Like it felt a little bit too shallow to just kind of spoon feed down the road. So, I mean, I guess blessing and a curse for people who have been playing those and like them. Yeah, you have more stuff coming. If you fell off because you didn't think there was enough there, that might be too late for you.
I mean, the fact that it's being released for free, the fact that you have it and they're like, hey guys, it's coming out, here you go. On this date, you can download it, is way better than, yeah, we bought this game. If you want golf, it'll be another $10. Like that type of deal. It's better that way.
I have a question for us and a question for chat. Is anyone excited for Octopath Traveler 2? Except me. Okay.
Bless you.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you play the first one?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Why have we never talked about it?
Just a couple months ago. It became free on Xbox Game Pass, so I picked it up finally.
For those of you just listening, I'm exasperatedly throwing my arms down right now. How have we not talked about this yet? Okay, one day we should talk about it. The first one, I didn't like it that much. Then I hated it. And then I liked it quite a bit by the end. I realized the key was just immerse myself in the excellent combat and especially the boss fights, which are so fun, and just like skip the story. The story was not very good. And when I tried getting more from the story, I was not enjoying it. Just skip the story, and the gameplay and the leveling and the progression is awesome.
Yeah, of the 8 characters, I liked about 2.5 of the stories.
Yeah.
So I spent more time on them and then kind of skipped the rest. This is another one that I think is a Dave candidate. Just because, again, turn-based and a battle system I think you would enjoy quite a bit. It's got that very old school kind of 2.5D. Well, I mean, it's mostly 2D, but kind of that old school, really beautiful art direction and sprite work. Like, I wish I could more wholeheartedly endorse the story, but just because of the combat alone, it's something I've considered recommending to you.
I mean, turn-based is my jam, but bad story is not. Like, that's the hard part to get over.
Yeah. So the problem, the pillars that you look for, turn-based, and it's not just like I feel like turn-based in and of itself, that's great. The combat system is really, really, really fun. And again, the boss battles sort of test that, but without like, you don't need a PhD to figure it out. It's just kind of like intuitive, and the way you have to break the opponent and then be able to go for damage and reserve your own. Have you ever played Bravely Default? I don't think so. The whole thing is like banking or using your bank of actions.
Yep.
I've heard that.
It's so fun.
With a mix of some Persona / other RPG weakness targeting.
Yes, exactly.
And extra turn stealing. So
all that's great. And great visuals, but story is.
And it's not even like the stories were bad. I thought 2 were bad of the 8. And some of it is just kind of lost in the sense of kind of what we talked about, Breath of the Wild, where it's like, okay, you have 8 different characters you can use and stuff. It's like, okay, but I still kind of have to do all of them. And by splitting the focus and not having any order to this, it sort of feels disconnected.
And it's 8 disparate stories. That's the other problem. They never are like Final Fantasy where you team up and now you're on the same mission. It's like they do their own thing and it's incidental which characters are accompanying whoever story you're exploring at that moment. It's a bad approach. But, maybe this one will be better. I'm going to play it anyways, though, because the combat is so good.
Well,
so talked about it.
Give it a look. We did get one person in Track Rock who mentioned he was excited as well.
Hey! Wow, look at that. I'm glad.
Good music, too.
Bayonetta 3, it was announced already, but, it's...
Well, Bayonetta 3 fans were waiting a long time. Obviously, that was announced earlier this summer, but the fact that now they got a new trailer and it's, next month, good for them. I
like it enough. It's not the best action, but it's fine. It's good. It's fun. I'm going through here. Tales of Symphonia, maybe. I've never played it before.
Look, I mean, I love Tales of Symphonia. It doesn't need to be re-released.
The music is great on Octopath. That's another pillar. There's 5 pillars. It's a kind of complex bridge thing we have.
Unfortunately, the plot pillar is like withered and falling over and crumbled.
Yeah, one's rotten. One pillar is falling. Okay. So, I mean, I think that's Nintendo. Anything else, Nintendo?
I mean, the GoldenEye reveal was kind of cool. I don't know that I'd want to go back and play it, but the fact that you can and it's going to be like upscaled and 60 frames a second and stuff, that's kind of neat.
I have a hard time with that because that's coming out for the online N64.
That was my complaint. Yeah.
Yes. So it's such a weird thing how they do that. Like they could and they won't say like, hey, we've got the IP for all of this. You pay us a monthly fee. Here's everything we've ever put out on Nintendo that we still have IP control over.
Yep.
But instead what they do is like, hey, here's Super Nintendo. 6 months later, hey, here's N64 with a couple games you like. And then 6 months later, remember that game you like? Well, now it's like you're always going to be looking for that next thing. And I get it. They want to keep the subscription flowing, but it's just kind of like, can I just pick what I want to play and I'll keep paying you because I like a lot of these games? I don't know.
Yeah. It's weird.
The closest they ever came to it was the original Virtual Console, and even that had its own flaws and frustrations that we've talked about on this very show. But this version's worse. So there's that.
I'm pulling up the Sony thing.
Okay.
So, Dave, this is what I was mentioning, where the single most thing I'm excited about, and it's hard to compare because it's not like God of War 2 was announced today.
Yeah.
But the trailer looks fucking good.
Really good.
It's 2 months away.
So good. Months. Yeah, and it's 2 months away, which we knew. I think it got delayed once, but since the first delay, they've set on this day, so we knew it was coming.
Yep.
Man, so good.
Yeah. I mean, I think they use the same voice actors in this, and the fact that Atreus' voice, you can hear it's grown, is so cool to me. You can see he's progressed from this scared little boy that he was in the beginning of God of War to this more rounded, dad, you need to trust me type of. I like it. Like, the progression so far looks really good. I don't know what the big enemy is, the story is in it yet, and that's okay. Well, but I can see the progression.
They could have gone with, like, he's a rebellious teen now. And it seems like that's not really where they're going, which I personally kind of like. It seems like he's trying to become like an adult, and he's like, you need to trust me too. And the father's kind of like, no, you're my son. I will now and forever be in charge. And like that, so much better direction if that's indeed where they're going.
Well, I mean, with the reveal at the end of that game of his true identity, which I don't want to spoil anything just in case. Like, I kind of thought they might go a little bit more of that rebellious route, or that that
me too.
And so I think it's interesting. I think they might have a factor of that in the game. I mean, they had a part of the original God of War where Atreus ran away from you and you had to chase him down because he was angry at you. I think there was an outside influence on that. Well, if I remember.
And he got all like kind of dealing with some of the identity stuff, but like he's like, oh, I'm hot shit now, and it's like, I forgive that. Small segments of it I can deal with. If you're gonna have a whole game where he's an asshole,
I don't want where it turns out that it's a Kratos versus Atreus as the final boss battle of the game. It's like, no, I don't want this.
No, but like Tyr, which I'm assuming it was Tyr, and then I looked it up later, and it is Tyr, is like the dude who you're like with the whole game with the long hair. Mm-hmm. And he was hinted at through the whole first game, and I was like, he's totally gonna be the fucking bad guy. Oh, Tyr, he's so generous. And it's like, no, he's gonna be the villain. And it looks like they maybe are not going in that direction, but like I'm pretty cool with it. They got a really interesting voice actor for him. He gives me shades of Jeff Fahey, who was the god from the first one. His name starts with a B. I forgot now. Yeah, right. It's right there.
It's right there.
He's the beautiful Norse god.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Baldur. Right?
What? Baldur. You said Baldur. Baldur. It's Baldur.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Baldur-esque, like really chews on the scenery sort of like performance, but I like it because it's great.
Yep. Oh, it's great.
Oh, the visuals, the little Thor snippet at the end. Excellent trailer. I'm so excited.
It looks like it's got the combination of the gameplay that I liked a lot from the original God of War, with a little throwback to the first part of the series that I didn't like as much, but still, I'm surprised I like this game as much as I do, but I think I'm going to really enjoy it.
I took notes too. There was something I wanted to say, and I remembered without even looking at the notes. Like, the whole thing of Ragnarok is destiny. Like, that's Norse mythology, really, because they know all the time, at every moment, Ragnarok is coming. And it's like, it's just this fated thing. There's nothing they can do to change it. So you're like, why do anything? But the gameplay, the trailer shows that the storyline is going to be very much like free will, and you can fight destiny, and you can choose your own path. I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I want. That's exactly the way to go in a story about Ragnarok. Bring it on. I love it.
How refreshing, though, that, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, right? Because the team did such good work on the original remake that I think it's easy, given the rest of the God of War series, to be like, well, maybe they're going to screw it all up. But to me, it's like, no, I mean, they produced this really excellent, again, maybe, if not game of the year, maybe best game ever type candidate. And now they seem to be following through with the same beats and the same trajectory. Like, that's great. Because when I look back at Kratos and the original, like, 3 God of War games, for example, like, who fucking cares?
No, not at all.
So if they're going to give that character that level of emotional depth, I think it's sort of like, I mean, it's not the same, but like it's akin to Lara Croft, where it's like this was a character that really had nothing, and now all of a sudden, all it took was one game, really, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, like I actually really like this character now. All it took was one game.
Credit for recognizing that you needed a change and doing it, but major credit for seeing what you had before and then turning it into like a strength. Like leveraging your poor decisions before, but then using that to fuel, like where he was made these games even better. And that is just like, that's writing that I will trust until they let me down.
To me, that's part of what makes Cobra Kai work, because while the original Karate Kid is really good, 2 is and 3 is blah. But now they're pulling from those materials, and because the people who are doing the show running for that are so good, everything they bring in from those, even though they were bad then, is actually pretty good now. So it's kind of the same idea where it's like you have this lineage and it's grotesque and bad, but with a fresh coat of paint and the right other settings around it, it can work.
Yeah.
That's like when in the first God of War, when, or I guess the fourth, whatever you want to call it, the newer one, where Kratos goes and finds the Blades of Chaos. And you can tell, even me who didn't really play through the first 3 games, that's a huge moment for him putting those Blades of Chaos back on, where it's like, oh shit, I'm going back to my old ways. It's a big moment, and it's kind of like showing back, like, hey, we've changed the gameplay, but now we're going to give you this little treat of the old gameplay for those who like it, and still incorporate it within this good game.
Yep.
And maybe we won't have quick time events of fucking multiple women, but that's fine. We can leave that in
I'm
the
all here
2000s.
Let's have it.
You know what? They did that with, luckily, that was already not in 4. God of 4 was what you were looking for, Jake.
I mean, nothing more I could love than putting my kids to bed and all right, I'm going to play God of War for a while. And I'm on this weird quick time scene. I got to press triangle. What is he doing? Sorry, Alex, go back to bed.
Yeah. We'll tell you about that in a few years. Bye.
Yeah. Wait, so you did go back and play the original games?
Oh no, I've touched them a little bit. Like I
okay.
played them a little bit years ago and never really got into them.
So, Mikhail, it's God of War 1, God of War 2, God of War 3, God of 4, God of 5.
Wait,
Right.
what?
Not to be confused with like Gears of 4, which is its own problem, and we don't talk about that series.
Christ.
Or
Certainly.
Right.
So yeah, Tekken 8. If you like Tekken, awesome.
a really beautiful trailer for a fighting game.
Yeah.
And they look like they're bringing back the thing that I thought made Tekken 7 the best, which was the slow motion shit at the end of a round when both fighters are low on health. So you can see like a strike coming in that might be the winning hit. Or like, and then if you evade, then that's in slow mo. Like that's, as far as hyping up fighting game moments, that's among the best systems we've seen. So like that looks like it's making a return. Looks pretty as hell. And I saw some folks who are like, I can't believe it's not going to be on PS4 as well. And it's like, all right, guys, it's almost the end of 2022. It's time to leave the fucking last gen in the past. It's time. We got to rip the Band-Aid off. There's no longer shortages on consoles after a long time of there being them. It's time to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yep.
Hell,
100%.
2K had the same problem this year because they're still on the same boat instead of like the whole city that the next gen games have for your My Player. It's like, I can't believe they brought that back. It's like, really? You can't? I can't believe they gave you a game at all.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's my long-winded way of saying, let's get the fuck out of PS4 now. It's time.
Yep, it's done. It's
done.
over.
It's over. Stop trying to develop for both. Just focus on the new gen now.
Yep.
Cyberpunk. I was reading. Did you bring up Cyberpunk and I missed it?
No.
Everybody's bitching about Cyberpunk. They're cheating their customers because the DLC, which to be fair, was at one point promised no matter what version of the game that you own for what system. But they've like realized, by developing for both, we really we released one of the biggest train wrecks in history. We're only going to focus on next gen. I'm like, thank God, because now we're going to get a game that actually works. But there's a lot of people that are like, they betrayed their customer base again, and it's like, man, they just can't win. This is CD Projekt Red.
That was a weird timing because they released it right when the new system came out, and then so many people couldn't get it, so they had to pander to the PS4 crowd instead of just if they didn't have the console release problems, they could have just kind of said, "Hey, this is the next generation game. This is what we're putting out, and that's it." And no, I don't think anyone would have been upset about it. But with the fact that nobody get their hands on a PS5 for a year and a half, 2 years basically, what are you gonna do? You know?
Yep.
Yeah, your options were a version that was the best, but on systems you couldn't get. A version on PC that was a buggy, nightmarish mess, but still looked really good and worked well eventually. Or the last gen versions that were so bad.
I read an article. They need to put the unpatched original release for like PS4 in a museum. It's so bad.
With like Superman 64 and E.T. and shit.
It looks like a game that was made like 15 years ago and even didn't work then. It's amazing.
Duke Nukem Forever goes in there, which has similar problems actually.
Yeah.
So anyways, I mean, not a ton out of the state of play. It was only like 15, 20 minutes. It was kind of funny they fell on the same day. And I thought it was also funny that Xbox was over there like, well, we're going to do a GoldenEye remake too. It's like, shut the fuck up, Xbox. Nobody cares. This isn't your day.
Exactly.
I'll talk just very quickly about the Hogwarts Legacy. Is like someone who is a fan of the Harry Potter series.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the idea of having a universe, open world type of Hogwarts, the Harry Potter universe game. I mean, delving into the greater universe in that has been built is interesting to me. I don't know what type of villains. I don't know anything much about it except for the fact that it exists. So I'm interested, especially because I've been completely refreshed on the series after having been reading it with my daughter now. So I'm interested.
Yeah. So that was a note that I made. Is like, oh, this game's coming out, and I'm like, I don't care until it falls in the camp for me. If I don't care until we learn, is it good or is it terrible? If it's good, actually, I'm going to get really excited. I think if you can pull off the Hogwarts experience and the Sorting Hat and really getting a distinct experience being in all the houses and all of that, awesome.
Or even outside of Hogwarts itself into the entire universe that has been built.
Yeah.
From what the trailer seems is that you're more in Hogsmeade, which is outside of Hogwarts. Which, okay, I'm fine with if that's the thing. If you want to put me, I think it would be good to have some experience in Hogwarts. Maybe that's your beginning tutorial as you going through school, but then you're an adult and you have to go through this world with all the spells. That's kind of cool too. I like that idea,
Well, there's something about like certifications in life and in games that I really like. So the idea of you go to school, you specialize in something, you graduate, and then you go get a job. And maybe there's a little bit of plot where like, you're one of 3 jobs. We don't need to make it crazy, but you're an auditor or you're like a chemist or maybe even a teacher at Hogwarts, whatever. That could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned, though, that it's not going to be good. And I don't really know why, because it's like J.K. Rowling's making the game.
No,
but I don't know. I don't know anything about I know so little about this game except J.K. Rowling just cannot be out of her own way.
No,
and she's...
Right.
Like her new book, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't. I can no longer certainly defend. That was a long time ago that I could even defend you. And now I'm like, I actively hate you.
I would love to revisit her Hall of Fame score.
I think that was a time where maybe some of us did. I did not know the depths of what was going on with her yet.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't as bad back then. She just keeps shooting herself in the foot over
It's just progressively getting worse.
We were on the slippery slope, but we hadn't slid all the way to the bottom yet. We have in the years since.
Really
I will say this much. I think it'd be cool to have something in the surrounding areas, but you have to be careful because if you're going to call it Hogwarts Legacy and then not deliver, it's sort of akin to how I felt about the frozen world in Kingdom Hearts 3, where it's like, it's frozen and all the cool stuff is over there and you're here not doing the cool stuff. And it's like, well.
It's like, you get to go through Arendelle? Oh, it's over there? Oh.
You see in the distance.
Yeah,
and
you can't actually go there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay, well, cool, I guess. This is my favorite part of video games is pretending something cool's happening off on the side.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's not even the only world that suffered from that in Kingdom
Hearts.
So, yeah.
I will say, Sean, I think your worry about it not being good comes from the fact of that kind of ever since Book 7 came out, it's kind of been a downward, like, what has been good since then? I mean, none of the video games are good.
You can say the movies were
movies are
okay. I'm sorry. Let me clarify.
You
can say the Harry Potter proper series was pretty solid. Whether or not you agreed splitting the last movie up, I think it was probably a bad decision, but fine. Those were still good. Mm-hmm. I've hated every movie since then. Some much more than others. I think the second Fantastic Beasts is one of the most miserable experiences I've had in a theater. So it's bad. Yeah, so I agree. The books have not been very good. Now she's like, I'm writing a book about a detective who gets canceled.
Oh,
it's
my God.
Where'd you get that idea, JK?
And it's like 1,200 fucking pages.
Pull from what you know. God, you're the worst person.
She's truly just a train wreck. So yeah, I share that concern a little bit of like, I think Hogwarts Legacy, like I know it's not connected to anything she's doing. Right.
Well, I think they've distanced themselves even. So
like
God.
Even
beyond just not being
so
connected.
Like I know she's not involved, but it's like because her awfulness is just so far reaching now, I'm like, I just hope they can make something good out of it.
And let me be clear, it's not that. I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to buy this game because I don't stand with her. Sure.
Which some people are going to do, by the way.
Yeah, some people
I thought it was a good... it was like the minimum thing that you could do, but I still think it was a good call that like you can have trans characters in the game that she hates so much, and like you can like they're going to allow you to do that. So they're not beholden to her. I thought it was a good move.
Yes.
Both because it's nice, but also to show like, hey, she's not affecting this game.
Right.
Again, though, I don't know. Is this a seasoned developer and like they churn out hits, or is this like a first project from a new? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And generally licensed things, we're a lot better than we were like maybe 20 years ago, where license was akin to like it's a cash in and it's bad every time. Every time. But maybe it'll be good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's there. Their idea is really good, Dave. I'm so on board with you.
Yeah, it's so cool
I just
sounding.
hope so much that the similar direction they've gone is kind of like how Star Wars almost went, where it's like, hey, George, you had this great thing a long time ago. We're going to put you in a corner and we're going to go make some cool stuff now.
Yeah. Well, and that worked for like a long time. Clone Wars and all that.
Yeah.
And then the new movie is not so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good.
Knights of the Old Republic was really good.
Knights of the Republic was really good. You know, The Mandalorian is really good. I think that almost gets forgotten sometimes because the movies have been so bad. But yeah, could be good.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last topic was the elephant in the room that we had to at least bring up, just because I'm disappointed.
You'll be interested in this if nothing else, Kayla.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was that basically after months and months, I mean, hell, I remember when we even brought up the news on the show because it was kind of out of nowhere when it first leaked. There was the whole bombshell, this story is coming out soon report that kind of flipped everything on its head. And then months later, it kind of ends in a whimper. Now, a $10 million fine, it's hard to call that a whimper, but of course, when we're talking about billionaires, it sort of ends up being as such, which is, it kind of just shows you what the haves and have-nots look like sometimes. But Robert Sarver, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, suspended for a year, fined $10 million because of the findings of the NBA's independent investigation, essentially that he used the N-word several times. He was making sexually inappropriate jokes at times, threatening people in the workplace. The obvious parallel for non-NBA fans is Donald Sterling, the Clippers owner, who did admittedly have more of a smoking gun in the recordings of his conversations where he basically just lambasted black players. But still, it's for Suns fans like us, we've always kind of not liked Robert Sarver just in general, and this obviously doesn't help that. Maybe some of us were hoping this would remove him. That's looking like it's not going to be the case now.
And I don't know why. I don't know if the NBA is saying like Donald Sterling, for example, it was much more incendiary, and Robert Sarver sometimes was not like as malicious. To me, there is no differentiation. You either, and ignorance is not an excuse either. So you've either like done it or you haven't done it. And if you've done it, this is like not. It's a slap on the wrist, certainly.
I will not defend Robert Sarver at all, and please don't take this as such. I will say what Donald Sterling did for 50 years is way worse than what Robert Sarver did.
Agreed.
Donald Sterling literally, discriminated against people in his housing developments based on their race. It's bad. Robert Sarver at best is an ignorant asshole that cannot read the room and see that, hey, you're making people uncomfortable with your stupidity. That's the most forgiving language, and what seemingly the NBA gave him in the fact that on the report they said that he just has sophomoric humor, which I have a really hard time with reading that.
Just guys being guys, right? Isn't that?
Yeah,
didn't we have someone president say that?
Yeah, and so I try to always look at things from different angles, and I think that Robert Sarver, in his heart, truly believes that, I was probably not the nicest, but I didn't do anything wrong necessarily. I was just trying to keep things light, which is stupid, and he needs to take advice from the people around him. After the first time he used the N-word, and someone said, "Hey, yo, dude, you can't do that. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think it's fair, if you can use it or not. You can't do it." And then he did it 5 more times after that. That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
But other things besides that, even just not of being the workplace environment is the thing that I think really should have kicked him out the most. The fact that he created such a toxic workplace environment that people truly felt that if they were going to come to HR that they'd be retaliated against, that is inexcusable in any business.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point. I know it's different. Management at the top is different than management at the bottom for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes for complexities that should be there. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a middle tier manager, you've done half of this, you're out the door faster than you can even blink. And so the fact that Robert Sarver, for him, this is a relatively small fine. It's a year away from the team. He's probably disappointed, but Not enough. It's not enough at all. I don't know if I needed a lifetime. I personally would have liked that. I don't know if that was ever in doubt, but like 1 year. But now we start getting into like the Deshaun
Watson.
Watson stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and which now the NFL is like, I don't know where it ended up, but I heard that they were starting to even push back on that, which I'm like, good for the NFL. Finally, the NFL is doing something. It's all a mess.
It shows you what the complications are with the fact that like these owners, as the name would imply, have like partial stakes in the league as a whole financially, because you would think on the surface this would be a black eye the league would not want to fester in the future. But then again, it would take something pretty major, because what power do they have to remove him? Especially when he hasn't done anything that was like, if they're only going to suspend him for a year, then they can't really say that he's done anything worthy of being removed from an ownership stake. Sarver clearly is never going to give up a share unless something else forces him to. And why would he? The valuation of the franchise has basically increased fourfold since he bought it. Mm-hmm. But then again, you now have a person who's going to be having to go through workforce training, which I don't even want to laugh at because of what some of the people in this went through. But like, it sounds so fucking stupid when it's the owner of a basketball team having to go sit in a classroom with somebody with a stick pointing at a chalkboard going, "We don't say this to women. Yeah. That's bad. Don't say the N-word." Like, and Robert's like furiously taking notes like, "Ah, yes. I didn't know this before."
Yeah.
The hard part comes down to the fact of the removal of an owner. Well, it's funny. The NBA rebranded them as governors now. Mm-hmm. They don't want to call them owners anymore, which no one calls
governor that. Better.
Well, it doesn't have the slave etymology behind it, but it's still not much better.
No. But so anyway, the rest of the league, the other 29, franchise owners have to say, or at least 23 of them have to vote him out. That's the rules in the bylaws. So they're hurting their own interests in a sense where all of them could be like, "Oh man, I have some bad stuff in my past. Like, what if they find that about me? I don't want to set up the precedent." Mark Cuban said it out loud, essentially, where he's like, even with Donald Sterling, who, again, horrible human being, deserved to be kicked out. Mark Cuban was like, "Guys, I don't know how I feel about setting up this precedent of kicking people out, even though he's an asshole." So the rest of them to kick out Robert Sarver would have to say like, "Man, this is the standard now, is we are going to kick our owners out for bad taste in jokes," essentially, is what they see it as. And there's more to it, clearly. I said it already, but that's kind of where they were, and they're not willing to put themselves on the line like that, I don't think.
That's a good point.
You see the same thing happen when it comes to like rule changes too. Certain teams, this happens especially in baseball, but all the sports, certain teams might have their owners vote against a proposed rule change because it's a bad look for their franchise. Mm-hmm. We saw it when they proposed the changes for the lottery system in the NBA, when it was like, all right, we're going to change the percentages to try and de-incentivize tanking. The teams that were currently bad didn't really want to vote for that because it hurt their chances of getting the number one pick that they've been working for under the old system. And that's something as innocuous as just the competitive balance. It has nothing to do with like morality and the future of your team / the league. And there's also the fear of reprisal too. I mean, if you're one of the owners who votes out another owner, but then you have your own skeletons come up, or other people are going to get back at you for that when you vote in the future, it's all kind of a thorny situation that's kind of a mess.
The saving grace from everything I've read and heard today, because I kind of tried to read up a lot on this, was there are ethics and morality clauses in just about any contract out there. There is a possibility that during the suspension, the other owners, because Robert Sarver only owns 35% of the Suns, the other owners out there could potentially try to enact that clause and force him to sell his shares in the team to other owners, and they could buy him out essentially. So there is a possibility on that. It would be a hell of a legal battle, and we know Robert Sarver will. That whole leak that Chris alluded to earlier, where they kind of said, "Hey, this big story is coming," I believe was absolutely put out by Robert Sarver so we could get ahead of it and get his lawyers on it before the story came out.
100%.
Yeah, so he's lawyered up. He knows he's got a good team behind him, and they will fight, and it will be a hell of a battle for him to give it up because, again, the franchise value has increased 4 times over, and he gets to be the face of a franchise, even though if everyone wants to punch that face.
It's true. So, sad day for Suns fans, but we're used to it. Every day's a sad day. No Kevin Durant, no championships, no nothing. It's fine. Everything is fine.
We're all miserable together.
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes you wonder, well, why even bother?
I will say I've seen people on Twitter. I've seen people. Now these are just people, empty threats probably, but saying like, dude, I'm not giving you my money. I'm done. Like, don't renew my season tickets. I'm like making it public because they're frustrated with it. And I know the demand will be there. I don't know that it'll affect their bottom line, but it could become a thing if a lot of season ticket holders do that. A lot of sponsors back out. The only unfortunate real way it's going to get traction, though, is if players start speaking up. And that's not fair to put the onus on them, I don't think.
No, that's an awful lot to ask of players that were already sort of marginalized by him in the first place and never really signed up for this. They just wanted to put a ball in a hoop. It's funny because it's only shut up and dribble until you want to put them in an awkward situation where they have to comment, and then all of a sudden they have this massive responsibility. So, pick a lane. I also kind of wonder, as a last point too, I would it almost be better to boycott next year rather than this year when he's not going to be present anyways? I know, I know in some ways it ties into the like being like this isn't enough, but if anything, it'd almost be better when he's back in the arena, back around the team, rather than doing it this year when it's like, all right, we at least got him out of here for some time. At least there was some suspension, unlike before when he just was able to reign freely. I don't know. There's no good answer.
This has to be the year we win the title because then he will not be at the trophy ceremony.
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was going to say, what is like karma, like the universe? What does it say if we win the year he's not the owner? But then, we're not going to win. So it's not worth thinking about because it's never going to happen. It is never going to happen ever, Dave.
From a basketball standpoint, it is really interesting when it's like, what if Kevin Durant does come available again and all of a sudden he doesn't have any input theoretically based on the rules? He can't have business decisions. It's like, what now? Like, what happens?
Maybe we'll be aggressive at the trade deadline because there's not somebody holding the purse strings. And then in my head, I was like, okay, so when we win, there's, confetti raining down from the rafters, and then Adam Silver hands the Larry O'Brien trophy to Larry Fitzgerald, who's now the full owner of the Suns somehow, even though he has nowhere near enough money to do that. But he's a little tiny part owner, maybe.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. We're not going to win a title. We're going to die without having won a title.
We are never going to win a title. It has been what is it? 70 years now?
No.
60. It's like
almost 60.
Getting
60.
close to in 2027, it'll be 60.
60 years. Why not another 60 years? What have we seen from the last 6 years? We're definitely in the next 60 going to do it.
We're at least not the Kings. Okay, so there's that.
The Kings will probably win before we will.
I don't know about that. They're a fucking disaster.
Look, everyone gives us shit for not taking Luka number 1. The Kings also didn't take him number 2, remind you. So
yeah, they took Marvin Bagley. They didn't take Trae Young either. So
yeah.
Alrighty, that's the end of the episode. Thank you for tuning in. The game show should be here next week. We'll see who the contestants are for that. It's not settled yet. We'll decide by next week.
It's going to be me and Dave. And
I'll be here.
They'll be here.
New challenger? Old challenger? We'll find out.
It's exciting. You'll have to tune in and see. As always, thank you for watching or listening. You can find us on our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. For new videos 7 days a week. We're finishing the Ace Attorney one. It's coming down to a really exciting finish. About 2 weeks left. And then after that, it's a question mark that I actually have to talk about with Michaela right afterwards. We'll see you next time.